Hello class, today I'm going to be discussing the light reactions which takes place during photosynthesis. Now the name is pretty much self-explanatory. It's a set of reactions that takes place when light is available from the sun. So let's begin. The light reactions consist of photosystem 1 and 2. These photosystems consist of a pigment complex and electron acceptor molecules. A pigment complex is basically a bunch of pigments, such as chlorophyll A and B, and the carotenoids condensed together. The function of the pigment complex is to absorb solar energy from the light each type of pigment is capable of absorbing. The pigment complex also contains the reaction center, which is where there are a bunch of chlorophyll A molecules. In the reaction center, electrons become energized from the solar energy that was absorbed by the pigments. These electrons become so energized that they escape from the reaction center and enter the electron acceptor molecule. The electron acceptor molecule is the other part of these photosystems. The electron acceptor molecule literally does as it says. It accepts electrons from the reaction center. These electron acceptor molecules are on the thylakoid membrane. The thylakoid membrane is where the electron transport chain takes place, and I'll discuss that in a little while. Back to the photosystems. The photosystems were discovered and named completely backwards to their function in the non-cyclic pathway. The non-cyclic pathway is the pathway that electrons follow. This pathway is composed of the photosystems and the electron transport chain. The electrons in this pathway enter photosystem 2 first, then the electron transport chain, and then photosystem 1. Initially, sunlight enters the thylakoids within the chloroplast as solar energy. This energy is absorbed by the pigment complex in photosystem 2. But where do the electrons come from that get energized in the reaction center? These electrons come from water. Water enters the thylakoids and is oxidized. This oxidation results in water giving up its two hydrogen ions and electrons. The hydrogen ions are left in the thylakoid space, which creates a hydrogen ion gradient that is used later in ATP synthesis. The electrons, however, enter the pigment complex's reaction center. These electrons are energized by the solar energy and are sent to the electron acceptor in the thylakoid membrane. But what about the oxygen that's left? The oxygen that is released, this oxygen is released as a byproduct of water's oxygenation and is a product of photosynthesis, and this is the same oxygen that humans breathe. Once these excited electrons enter the electron acceptor in the thylakoid membrane, they are put into the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain functions by a series of reduction and oxidation reactions. In reduction reactions, electrons are added to an electron carrier to stay in the electron transport chain. The electrons are then released by an oxidation reaction. This cycle continues until the electron reaches photosystem 1. The electron transport chain is similar to the game Pass the Egg, in which you are given an egg, which is similar to the electron, and that will be a reduction process, and then you pass the egg to someone else, or like passing the electron to the next electron carrier, and that is similar to an oxidation reaction. These reactions along the electron transport chain release energy from the electron just as any reaction does. This energy that is released is captured and helps contribute to the hydrogen ion gradient. Once the electrons have traveled through the electron transport chain, they have lost a lot of energy. They enter photosystem 1 as a low-energy electron. The same process that happens in photosystem 2 happens in photosystem 1. As the re-energized electron enters the electron acceptor, it is passed onto the NADP reductase enzyme. This enzyme helps create NADPH by the addition of electrons and a hydrogen ion to the coenzyme NAD+. This is a reduction reaction that creates NADPH. NADPH is then sent to the Calvin cycle to be used in carbohydrate production. The hydrogen ion gradient previously mentioned aids in the production of ATP. There are tons of hydrogen ions in the thylakoid space and very few in the stroma, which is outside of the thylakoid. The hydrogen ions want to be balanced and spread themselves to the stroma, and this causes a hydrogen ion gradient because there are so many ions being held back. This is similar to a dam. The thylakoid membrane is the dam holding back water, which is similar to the hydrogen ions. Once the dam releases the water, energy is produced. The thylakoid membrane has enzymes on it, called ATP synthase, that allows these hydrogen ions to exit the thylakoid space. Ions can't cross a membrane by themselves, so they need this enzyme to aid them in active transport. When the hydrogen ion moves down its gradient through the enzyme, energy is produced. This energy, along with a phosphate molecule, is added to ADP to create ATP. This movement of the hydrogen ions to create ATP is known as chemiosmosis. The ATP that is produced is used in the Calvin cycle. Both the NADPH and ATP produced are used in the Calvin cycle to create carbohydrates such as glucose. The light reaction's main goal is really to produce ATP and NADPH to aid in the Calvin cycle.